And so he would select an import wine every month and a domestic wine, and then he would alternate the red and the white. So this particular month, which was March of 1989, the white wine was from Romania. And I'm going to read this to you as part of the show. And I want you to we'll just discuss each one of these paragraphs. But what's really weird, I just realized when I read this again, is the day he featured that, the month he featured that, is also the month I started with him. And so he wrote this note to his members saying, by the way, my youngest son, who's now 30, unfortunately, that's not the case anymore. And he's starting here at the Wine of the Month Club. And I go, how fun is that? Because when I remember the wine very well, which is a fun thing about wine, your memory's so keen when it comes to flavors and the nose. But I remember this, and it was $2.50 a bottle.
Wow.
So,
wow.
And it was really good. Anyway, we'll get started. What I do is I'll do a quick introduction. I talk about a couple of shows that are coming up that I want people to listen to, and then we'll introduce you and we'll start talking. And then at the end, I'll turn off the recorder and we'll just wrap up. I'll tell you how I handle, the press release and all that stuff. So we might as well just get started so we don't waste any more of your time. Make sure the recorder's running. It says yes. Lighting looks good. Okay. Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And I am in the studio today about to have oh, wait a minute. How do you say your last name?
Well, I think that it's enough. Marinela and Ardelean, I would say.
Ardelean.
Yes.
I was going to say in French, Ardelean.
Which sounds very good, actually.
Yeah, it does sound like Marinela.
Yes.
Okay, we'll start over.
Beautiful.
Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul K. And we are in studio today about to have a conversation all the way out in Venice with Marinela Ardelean. And I said it in French again. Introductions in just a minute. Hey, listen to a conversation that I just released with my father just before he passed a couple of years ago. I convinced him to sit with me and have a conversation on mic about his career as an immigrant from Cairo, Egypt to America, becoming a merchant, and eventually establishing the idea of wine in the mail or the direct-to-consumer industry. Really fascinating conversation. I've had a lot of positive comments on the re-release of that. As well, there's another episode that came out recently with Jerry Eisterhold. Who is Jerry Eisterhold? He is an American who lives in Missouri, who wants to bring back the indigenous wine grapes of America. And as we all know, the Vitis vinifera, the grapes that we all know, Chardonnay, Cabernet Merlot, didn't really exist in America. But there were wine grapes under the Vitis lambrusca category. And he has propagated about a dozen of these things, though he's already tossed 4 of them because the wine is horrid. So have a listen to that show. But not why we're here today. We want to speak to Marinela. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Paul, for inviting me and for doing this beautiful and useful podcast.
Well, thank you. It's we were discussing sort of what your role is in the world of wine, and you used the word wine expert, which I think is underserved. You are sort of waving the flag for Romanian wines. You live in Venice, which is a very romantic town in Italy, in the north of Italy. But your mission is really to do what? To get Romanian wines back on the world stage?
I would not say necessarily back, but on the right stage and with the right visibility, because Romanian wines has everything what's needed in order to stay at the same table with the French and Italian wines, I would say.
Well, I'm trying to, we were talking about this, you said you're both Italian and Romanian.
Exactly.
And your accent, like the other day I had a Scottish woman an Irish woman. She's an MW. She lives in London. And so I was trying to place her accent. So I would not know a Romanian accent if I heard it. Would you say you have a Romanian accent as well as an Italian accent?
I heard that it's a mix between Italian and Romanian right now in terms of my English. So
perfect.
Yeah.
We love that. I mean, my
Thank you.
father, and we were going to talk about him in a little bit, but because of a newsletter he wrote in 1989, but he came to America from Cairo, speaking 5 languages, and apparently, in which I was obviously not around, had a very, very thick English accent, and never ever detected it as a child or as an adult from him. So I don't know how he pulled that off, but you know, let's start with this newsletter. This is 1989, and I was fascinated by this. I just told you the story about Romanian wines because one of the first wines I sold when I came to work with my father in 1989 was a Romanian Sauvignon Blanc from a winery called Premiat. And I'm going to read you a couple of paragraphs, and I'll ask you to comment on that because I think it's fascinating. It was such a popular wine in 1989. It was only $2.50, which you were stunned to hear. But so my father, first paragraph says this, and maybe you can validate it or we can move on from it. But Romania, would you believe, ranks 8th in the world of wine production, yet it is slightly smaller than the state of Oregon. Romanians drink 30 liters per capita per year, compared to our own average of less than 7 in America. Is that still a valid statement?
It depends if we take into consideration only the official numbers or we take into consideration the fact that we very much love wine produced in Romania and not only. So more or less, I think that we could stay on that range by choosing to be safe in terms of numbers. But
So
you said number 8. Right now, we are in terms of viticulture, in terms of number of hectares, Romania is on top 6 and number 13 globally speaking.
Wow, so you're climbing the ranks, aren't you?
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because I spent the last 35 years, starting with this newsletter, it sounds like, tasting wines, and I always considered a Tuesday, which is our tasting day here, sort of a thermometer or a litmus test of what was happening in the industry, what was coming to America, and I can only speak on the American market, and I had not seen very much. I mean, Slavic wines anyway, but Romanian wines seem to have disappeared, and I thought this was originally like a Pepsi-Cola import or part of the Pepsi-Cola exchange. Does that jive, or is that just something I made up?
Well, it's difficult for me to imagine that. I can say that right now the Romanian wine is available mostly where the Romanians are living.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I am familiar with 2 importers from Washington and New York City area, where I had an event 3 years ago with Deschidem Vinul Românesc, Open the Romanian Wine, a national program developed by Carrefour Romania, of which ambassador and consultant I am. And I had a very nice tasting evening with journalists and importers, where I've met 2 of them, 2 importers, Regal Wine, and another importing company called Amavi Vino, owned by a Romanian guy, Armand, which is importing quite an important number of wineries in the United States, Romanian wineries.
Mm.
So it's more niche, I would say, even when we are talking about the quality. I mean, the wineries which are considered to be good wineries in terms of quality of wines. So I would say that I'm happy to see quality right now, more than quantity for what's happening in the United States market in terms of Romanian wines, more than probably other countries in Europe. Why not?
You think we're going to get right into the weeds here, as we would say, because I was just looking at the internet sales or the ads that I've been receiving on my phone, particularly during the holiday season, and the proliferation of new internet sites, new wine sites. And there's a keen understanding, I noticed a keen issue, and that is almost everybody in America, at least that's selling wine online, was talking about, the cheapest, least expensive thing they could come up with. I mean, and I was in the subscription business for a long time, and they're touting, wines for $5 and wines for $6 and a case for $72, that kind of thing. Are you saying that that you feel the Romanian imports, the stuff coming to America or even Europe or Asia, are trying to position themselves in a more quality range and stay away from the gutter of wine
And
consumption?
I will tell you why. Because Romanian wines are not cheap.
Really? They were in 1989.
So
what's happening with that? Why?
Because the consumption in Romania is still high. So in terms of Romanian wines, if you consider that only 5 to maximum 10% of the local production is exported, which is
really
very, very low percentage. And we have, for example, the biggest exporter, the biggest producer in terms of bottled wines exported, which is Recaș. And very often they are selling or like some other producers, of course, or private labels for the supermarkets, or maybe some importers which they want to focus more on label more than origin of the wine. So there is a huge quantity, but for the rest, the producers are willing to invest on having their wines or in the restaurants, or a Romanian wine to be sold needs a story, needs to be held by education, because otherwise, why would you choose a Romanian wine? Because maybe you're curious, or maybe a Romanian friend, or maybe your father was dealing with some Romanian wines some years ago. So you need or to have some knowledge, so to have some expertise in order to be curious, and not only to be curious, but to try the local grapes, which are becoming more and more popular. And we won many medals in terms of recognition for the quality of these local grapes. Otherwise, you need to have some more reasons. And in order to have some more reasons, you need to have access to information. You need to have access to knowledge and details about these wines, regions, grapes, and producers.
It's interesting you say that. I'm going to read the next paragraph because we're going to get into it a lot of the marketing as this conversation evolves. And I had this conversation yesterday on a podcast with a Bordelaise of a classified growth Bordeaux, and we started talking about this effort it's going to take to teach people and to get them to taste, because I think the internet and these kinds of clubs have done a disservice to the consumer in not telling the story. But so here's the second part of this paragraph. You tell me if it's still accurate, or my dad was doing lousy research. But it says, Romania is considered a Latin country more than a Slavic land. Around 500 BC, the territory of Romania, originally known as Dacia, was populated by Romans who were exiled there. Archaeological studies show that the grapevine was cultivated 6,000 years ago. Does that sound accurate?
Actually, we have lots of written articles and legends which are saying that viticulture was in Romania 6,000 years ago. Actually, we have the proofs talking about 2,600 years ago. For sure could be 4, 6, or even 4, 5, or even 6,000 years. We do not have any doubt in terms of history, in terms of tradition for viticulture. We are dealing right now, at least at this stage, with improving quality nationally, embracing more and more local grapes, learning how to do marketing, and learning how to create and to maintain a national voice for the Romanian wines. Because now we are ready and also interested on export. Until now, not so much, at least for the past 30 years.
So you think we're sort of on the cusp of, breaking out into the worldwide recognition of wine, which is not an easy task. But when you tell this story, or if it's brought up, when you talk about the history, potentially 6,000 years old, I'm Armenian. We found a winery in Armenia that's 6,000 years old. We visited. We saw the winemaker's shoe, or the cellar rat had shoes there. But is that an interesting story for the consumer so far, or are we more interested in current conversation about Romanian wine? Because I think it's interesting. And I'm just to position myself. I think it's interesting that there's this history. It kind of leads to this idea of old world versus new world. Like I'm sure the technology of Romania is newer now, but it's really old world when it comes to, to its legacy. So, but is that an interesting story for the consumer to tell them from the Romanian side of point of view?
Paul, I think that if we want to sell successfully Romanian wines, it's not enough to talk about tradition, to talk about grapes, to talk about how successful are the Romanian wines. So we need to talk about the country, because this is the difference between Romanian wines and probably wines from Bulgaria or other countries, which are beautiful as well. But Romania as countryside, has something which is unique in the world, starting with Transylvania, starting with the diversity in terms of mountains, sea. You can have plenty of different styles and different grapes in one country. So talking about the Romania means talking about the Romanian wines and vice versa. That's why I also published actually last year, in autumn of last year, a book talking about my PhD research, where I've studied about the relationship between a country and the wine in terms of brand. So we'll never be enough talking about about Romanian wines. We need to talk about the country, and we need to promote the country in order to promote the wines.
I completely agree with that. There's a few countries in this sort of position that have come out of, what is the current government of Romania? Excuse my ignorance. I should have looked this up, but is it a democracy? Is it?
No, it's a democracy, and we are going to have election this year. And politically, we are quite stable, and we are going better and better, I would optimistically say. And it's helpful because we know very well how important is the stability, politically speaking. And the producers are, it was for the past almost 30 years, very difficult to hang out together and promoting together on the international shows. They are starting slowly but safely to promote themselves together in international fairs. And it's something very important with what is happening in Romania. The second generation, it's taking over the business in many wineries after the communist period, and with a very very healthy approach, which is very much needed in the wine world. I would say we need to stay connected. We need to communicate together when it comes to a country.
When was freedom?
89.
1989. Oh, wow. This was March of 89. We wrote this newsletter. So it was right around that time.
In December it happened.
Well, this is an interesting part of this, because I think, and I don't know what happened in Romania, but certainly other parts of the Soviet bloc, they were sort of relegated to certain types of beverages. So in Armenia, virtually any winemaking stopped except for propagating grapes for brandy. And so in this way, I look at the Armenian wine market as it's old world because there's a ton of history to talk about, but really when it comes to contemporary winemaking, it's new world. They're starting from scratch. Would Romania be sort of considered that way? What was it doing during the Soviet days?
Quantity.
Just quantity. So just
quantity and investing on grapes which were delivering quantity. So for the past 20 years, lots of investments on replanting and going only on noble vineyards. And for the past 5 years, I would say lots of investments on local grapes.
Wow,
So
interesting.
the international grapes, in terms of number of hectares, it's decreasing, and the number of hectares in terms of local grapes, it's growing, which is encouraging when it comes to the authenticity, when it comes to unicity on in terms of Romanian wines. We could have probably one of the best Sauvignon Blanc in this part of the world, but if we do not have a Fetesca Regalo or a Fetesca Neagră, which makes the difference, we are going to be stuck on the price problem or the price subject or question. So we need to have different, how to say, we need to have an element which makes the difference. And in this case, the local grapes are very, very useful.
So this is very so interesting. And what you're saying is like sort of jiving. I'm going to read you the next paragraph or two. And this is important because we're talking about the time that Romania became free and what was going on in that production. It says today, about 618,000 acres are planted with grapes for wine production, twice as large as California's wine grape acreage, which is fascinating. And there are 4 wine growing regions with 17 wine zones. Our Sauvignon Blanc comes from the Ternava region. Are we still talking about the same appellation type thing? Is there control? Is it like, I mean, California, you can submit to the federal government for an appellation, and you have to prove that there's a reason for it. In other words, there's a certain kind of temperature change, or there's a certain kind of wind that comes up in the morning that changes the character from its neighbors. Is that similar in the Romanian government?
Yes, and we still have Ternave, we still have the Sauvignon Blanc and Jidvei, which is one of the most important producers in Romania, is the biggest producer of Sauvignon Blanc in Romania with 600 hectares of this grape of Sauvignon Blanc, and probably one of the biggest in Europe as a family-owned business. And the DOC, we do not have DOCG like in Italy, and probably only Italy has DOCG, like Nation of Origin Controlled and Guaranteed. We have only DOC. And this is also very good because it's improving. More and more producers are going on the appellation categories. We have the ONVPV, which is the office from the government owned by the agriculture minister, which is giving all the certificates for the DOC and the EGP, which are the geographical indication for the wines which are not DOC. So you said 4 regions. Right now we have 7 vitical regions in Romania, and we have approximately 500 wineries.
Wow, that's growing. Because here, this is the part that fascinates me based on what you're saying. My father says, so this is 1989, for the past 10 years, so since 79, and he started this business in 72, he bought his wine shop in 1969. But for the past 10 years, I have consistently stopped by this particular importer's tasting table to evaluate the Premiat wines. They fascinate me. The price was always right. Sometimes the wines weren't hitting the mark, but this one did, this particular Sauvignon Blanc. But here's the part I wanted you to talk about. Premiat is the export brand of Romanian wine to the United States. The government-owned agency for wine export, known as Vinexport, has one distributor for the entire USA. So was that the government exporting the wines?
Because all the wineries were owned by the government, because there was no democracy at all.
And so how many, do you remember, do you know how many wineries were then around? Was it Premiat was the only one? Because it was...
I don't know.
So now freedom comes, democracy comes. People are interested in the wine trade. Looks like you added a couple of regions, through the process you have there. And now we're touting, because in this case, obviously it's a Bordeaux varietal, but we're looking at indigenous grapes now. How do you, maybe this is too hard a question at this point, but how do you tell the world that it's time for new varietals? Even Argentina, touts Malbec, which has been around forever, and from Bordeaux. Chile has Carmenere from Bordeaux again. California grows whatever you feel like, But how do you tell the world it's time to test and explore? Like, what's the most popular indigenous grape in Romania?
Fetească Neagră, and talking about the democracy and what's happening in the past years. The first private company in Romania is called Serve, and the company was established in 1994 by a French, actually a Corsican guy, which was in the wine business. His family owned Piper Heidsieck, and also Domaine Peraldi in Corsica, another very important winery.
Mm-hmm.
So lots of investors came to Romania, but the first one to understand the potential of the most relevant and the most successful today local grape from Romania, which is Fetească Neagră, was Guy Depois. So this guy arrived in Romania and traveled in different regions, wine regions in Romania, and decided that 1 hour away from the capital, which is called Dealu Mare region, he decided to invest and to create this winery, which is today a very successful and very well respected winery. And Fetească Neagră since then slowly started to grow together with other grapes. We could say that 10 to 15 local grapes are quite popular in Romania and enough well known by the consumers in Romania. But the most popular are these Fetească Neagră, which I will try to describe a bit for those who never heard or never tried.
Who can't pronounce it.
Right. Fetească Neagră, which sometimes is translated with Black Maiden. Sometimes, some Romanians agrees, some others are not in terms of the translation, but I am quite confident with Black Maiden, which is called Fetească Neagră, and has the elegance of Pinot Noir and character of Syrah. So you will have the spiciness, you will have the vivacity of Syrah, and you will have the elegance of Pinot Noir. And it's produced in every part of Romania in terms of wine regions. We have in all 7 wine regions from Romania this local grape. And we have white, sparkling, rosé, red. For age, we have a producer which has a collection of old Fetească Neagră, more than 100,000 bottles in this region, Dealu Mare. So, yes.
So Pinot Noir, the elegance, which I agree, I'm a huge Burgundy fan, a very expensive habit. And, but Pinot Noir, yeah, because Pinot Noir, when you say elegance, it's a great term for it because it is so descriptive of where it's grown. Would I be able to have Fetească Neagră? What is it?
Bravo. Fetească Neagră. Bravo, Paul.
Thank you. From the different 7 regions and say, I have a reasonable expectation of what this wine should taste like because it's elegant like Pinot, meaning it adopts where it's grown?
Well, of course, it's, it depends in terms of style, in terms of clone, in terms of the red, the rosé, sparkling, but has that drinkability, has that finesse, which is part of the the grape character. And it depends how the producer choose to propose the wine made 100% with Fetească Neagră. I will add something useful as well. One of the most successful red blend in Romania is made of Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, and Fetească Neagră.
Sounds like a super Romanian.
Yes, it is. Bravo. Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating because, again, I can reference Armenia because I'm tied to it and I understand the problem. I've been there. I've interviewed winemakers from there. And, the marketing of wine is very difficult. And I had an interesting conversation with a Washington-based winery, since you were talking about Washington. And, they have a system up in Washington State where the wineries are taxed by a certain amount of tonnage. And I think they're taxed again after they ferment and bottle. And then that money goes to a commission or a co-op of all made up of winemakers to decide how they want to promote the region of Washington State or Columbia Valley, or whichever part it is, to the rest of the world. The Armenians can't do this. In fact, one of the interviews was, we're not very good. We're all chiefs. We're not very good Indians. We're not very good team players. And so the idea of trying to tax on volume that would go to some co-op where that marketing is spread around isn't going to happen. What's happening in Romania? The government's still involved. Is there a group of winemakers that get together and try to support each other and market? Or are you doing that by yourself?
I think that we have plenty in common with Armenia.
Oh, you figured as much, but
yes. But the things are improving, Paul. As I said at the beginning of our dialogue, and the producers are understanding that an association or getting together when there is at least one common goal, not necessarily for a long period of time, but maybe for an event or maybe for a specific action, starts to work. And I experienced that even on my own way with the Wines of Romania, which is a platform which I created 2 years ago, or winesofromania.com.
Mm-hmm.
And through the platform, I organized some events. One of them was at Mundus Vini, one of the most important wine competition in Europe, is in Germany, where, for example, I took all the partners of Wines of Romania and I organized a very nice evening with more than 120 experts from all over the world tasting and discovering the Romanian wines. So it's a matter of trust and timing, because we need time in order to understand how important it is, not necessarily a team building in this case, but creating a common voice, which is needed, because even if we would have the best producer in Europe, will never be enough. We need to talk about the country, as I said earlier. We need to make appealing for the diversity, for the authenticity. If would be only one producer, will never be enough to cover the need for a country.
Here's my thought on that. It's almost as if the wine industry, and we all know it's got some troubles, it's got consumption issues, it's got contemporary generations that are against alcohol, or they don't understand wine and they want not. I mean, I just tasted a very good Prosecco. I mean, authentic Prosecco that was de-alcoholized. It was really good, but I don't get it. I don't know why you do it, but packaging is in the way. We have cans and we have bottles and we have plastic. So I think the wine business, the industry of the marketing of wine, fine wine, is has to take a step backwards. And what I mean by that, if you look at this patch here, this is a patch from my father. It's called Les Amis de Vin. It was an American-based wine enthusiast group. They held dinners and lunches, and Robert Mondavi spoke, and Mike Gergich spoke. All these famous people at that time in the 70s telling those stories were one-on-one. I mean, you did that, and I don't think in the long run the story of wine is when I'm sitting at dinner with my friends and family and I say I got this wine for $5 on the internet. That's not really a story. But if I can say that I went to Romania and I tasted this wine and it was incredible in this Tarvana region with the rolling hills and all the things going on, that takes me back and it gives me a reason to appreciate what's in the glass. Do we have tourism and a wine trail in Romania yet, or is it just burgeoning, just starting?
Talking about Târnave, which is the first one which comes into my head, is I just had a video reportage in Târnave, which was absolutely amazing. In the heart of Transylvania, a castle used for hunting in the 15th century,
Wow.
owned by Jidvei producer, no? And is, I would consider as a Chateau Relais, for example, where you can have everything, starting with gastronomy, with photo hunting, with horse riding, and farm to table experience. It's a very, very impressive reality, which is available in the heart of Transylvania, in Romania. This is only one example. We still have some very successful examples, and I am convinced that this is one of the most important tool which we have, and luckily it's improving and growing. We have for promoting Romanian wines by promoting Romanian experience in terms of wine tourism, gastronomy. Yes, it's mandatory, and is growing.
Well, it's the wine industry is very slow. You only get one chance a year, and it's agricultural and marketing, and unfortunately, I kind of say this unfortunately because we're in this business, to sell something, make a profit so that we can do it again next year. Armenia, even Budapest, when we were there, seemed like it was stuck between or transitioning out of the Soviet times. So architecturally, arts, had sort of stalled, and now food has come, gastronomy has come, the idea of farm to table has come. And when we were downtown Yerevan in Armenia, I was like flabbergasted. We were there in only 2006, and it still felt like a Soviet bloc country. And that was, 10, 15 years after freedom. And so I'm going to guess that Romania is probably on the same sort of path. It just takes a lot of time.
It does take time, starting with trust from the producer side to invest in this part, because we know very well in developed country and in countries like Italy, France, Spain, tourism is not considered only to be an industry by itself. It's also part of branding. So giving an experience at the winery is going to help your brand and branding increase. And you're going to receive, the results from other sides than selling rooms and then the experiences at the wine hotel that you might have.
I just looking past this, I just noticed that my father wrote this wine is 85% Sauvignon Blanc and 10% Fetiasca.
Regala.
Fetiasca Regala?
If it's from Târnave, I'm sure.
Târnave, wait, I've been saying that wrong. Târnave.
Fetiasca Regala.
And
it's a royal Fetiasca.
And 5% Traminer.
Yes, as well. Our grapes known for their quality in the Transylvania region, and Târnave is the most important wine area in Transylvania.
So it says our wine is greenish straw yellow, and I remember it. In fact, you can't see. Oh yeah, you can see the shelf here.
Yes, I
behind me, and there's more in boxes. These are a collection of vintages that my dad featured going back to the 70s that I found, you won't believe this, in a local home. By my home here in Southern California, my wife and I were on a walk. We went into an open house because the house was for sale. We went in the basement. There were 200 bottles of my father's wines on the shelf. The owner of the house had already moved to another Southern California city, and these wines were just left. And I pulled one out, and my dad's sticker was on it. There's actually a wine that I bought in 1985 or 1990. And I immediately got a hold of the owner and said, I'll trade you bottle for fresh wine. And so this gentleman got like 20 cases of really, the current vintages. And I'm sure there's a Premiat Sauvignon Blanc in one of the boxes, unopened, which would be loved to taste. But he writes, our wine was a greenish straw yellow in color. It has a fruity aroma with a hint of grassiness and plenty of distinct Sauvignon Blanc varietal character. Very clean. It has a medium to light body, dry with the crispness of acidity and a nice follow-through of fruit. The middle is full of flavor with it lingers in the mouth. It finishes with a hint of Sauvignon Blanc green grassness. Then it says served chilled with turkey and chicken casserole. I was hoping he would have put an indigenous Romanian dish there, which, how does that work in Romania now that you're transitioning sort of the European culture and this idea of farm to table? Is there sort of a cuisine that grew up with the wine industry in Romania?
So there is a trend for the Romanian dishes approach with a modern way, like a reinterpretation of the Romanian gastronomy, make it more modern, let's say. So I think that it's something which is going to grow and going to be successful, especially when it comes to food and wine pairing, when it comes to experiences on the winery and different regions. And the Romanian chefs are also very, some of them investing in this direction, which is talking about, actually, through the dishes, is talking about Romania. So as in most of the part of the world, the Italian cuisine is appreciated and loved. It happens also in Romania. But plenty of Romanian restaurants with Romanian cuisine or Romanian traditions is more and more appreciated by the tourists, but also by locals because of this modern approach.
So the Master of Wine, the famed group out of London, just eliminated from their vernacular the word old world and new world. And people would ask that question here at my business. And, the definition always sort of carried two meanings for me. One would be the idea of old world being just an old vintage, an old part of the wine world. Romania would be included in that. Armenia, France, of course, but America, Australia, Argentina would not. Then it's also sort of evolved to a style, younger, fruitier, more approachable wines versus earthier tobacco, earth, and all those things. But it's interesting to me that the MMW group would outlaw that because here in Romania, it sounds like you are New World because you get a chance to do whatever you want. You can grow whatever you want. You're not bound by the AOC, or you're not bound by, the 5 grapes like in Bordeaux or Burgundy for the 2. Would you consider that idea? Would you say that you would, with an emerging cuisine and being able to do what you want, call it New World wines?
Well, by eliminating new and old world, for me, it seems like avoiding to say if you're feminine or masculine, somehow. So trying to be more like,
that's interesting.
I don't agree with it
myself.
A bigger audience.
Yeah.
Because if you are saying you're new world, maybe you would miss the old world. If you're saying that you are from the old world, you are missing the new world. So I feel that is a commercial need in somehow. Mm-hmm. And on the other hand, it's also true that it's extremely difficult to talk about terroir today.
Well,
because, yeah.
Go ahead. Finish.
No, please.
Yesterday, this tasting, we tasted Bordeaux from Chateau Lagrange, and we went back to 83. And it was obvious to me that this was made under a different philosophy. And I think you'll agree that terroir is not just the earth and the weather and the wind. It's, the history of the winery and the winemaker contributes to this. So I think it kind of ties your hands. I would be very comfortable. I was very comfortable in this tasting to say this is old world, at least in its character as a style. And the reason I brought that up is because, I guess we get tied up in the academia of wine, and it's like you can make these arguments about whatever you want. But, the MW program, Master Somms, the Diploma WSET, has evolved for years and years. I had a MS in here not too long ago, a good friend, Emmanuel Kamiji, and he's like, yeah, when I passed the test in 1996, we didn't even know about almost Argentina. Chile was barely on the radar as far as studying for it. Has these groups recognized the importance of the Romanian wine districts, or do we still have time to expose them to it?
We still have not only time to expose, but I think the duty to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think you talk about earlier that is the people curious? Why would be curious to taste the Romanian wine and to discover a wine coming from Romania? A person which is passionate about wine, it's also curious. You want to taste something different. You want something new. Otherwise, you would be only a consumer. Doesn't matter what it's written on the label. If it's white, maybe a Sauvignon because it's easy to pronounce, or a Chardonnay because it's sexy, might be enough. Otherwise, if you want to explore something more based on your preferences, you might want to be impressed. You might want to be, we need that enthusiasm when we are exploring new taste and new wines. That's all about.
So I think that is right on. I think it goes back to this experiential part of wine, which is, I would love to hear your interpretation of this supermarket shelf in Romania, but I can tell you in California or the United States, it's all the same stuff, and it's all the same, what we call formula wines, actually, fermented backwards to the extent that they choose a profile of a character and then they make a wine that satisfies the consumer's needs. And I can't say I'm against this, but I don't like it because we need those wines, because people that want to learn how to drink wine have to start with them. But you and I taste wines of great complexity and character in our career, and we want people to know about those. So what is the shelf like in Romania, and are you beginning that path now that you're finding there's a consumer palate that we need to satisfy, or are people accepting in Romania the things that you're putting out there based on their quality?
Oh, I have double experience here, double as a consumer and also as a consultant for the supermarket, one of the biggest group in the world, I would say, a French group. And more than 70% of the wines are still both on the shelves, on the supermarkets.
Yeah.
And talking about this specific supermarket, this specific retail, we created a program which is encouraging small producers which otherwise would not be able to sell their wines in a supermarket.
No, that's great.
We have 60 more or less private labels, which are not private labels literally, are wines which were created by me and the buyer on the supermarket based on, you said, kind of copy-paste, which is, successful for the consumer. In our case, we encourage the local grapes. We have almost 15 local grapes listed in the program. We encourage the wines which are, successful commercially, and not because of the taste, but a good wine.
Mm-hmm.
I said that we have more or less 5 wineries, which are definitely a low number compared with the number of hectares, almost 200,000 hectares of vineyards in Romania. Mm-hmm. And the producers, some of them, especially the smallest one, they might need some input, some insights in order to, to reach easier the consumer. Maybe in terms of label, you will need this label instead of that, the other label, or in terms of vinification sometimes. So the situation of supermarkets in Romania, I would say that is useful for the wine industry, locally speaking, and growing in terms of why not even quality education, because as well with this program also we invest on the education, educating the consumer, learning about the grapes, the regions, the producers, the sparkling, which is still a trend in Romania, not so much as for example, the rosé is getting a bit down as a trend, but the sparkling is like growing very much as a trend in Romania. And the wine bars are still not many in Romania. We have, but I'm sure that with a bigger number of wine bars in Romania, the education or the information will get much easier and faster to the consumer.
So fascinating, just because of politics, because of region, because of proximity, whatever the reason is, that there's so many countries in so many different parts of their path to, let's just call it world-class acceptance of their brands. And there's a lot. There's a lot coming. Croatia is one of these places. Slovenia. Croatia, when we were in Croatia a few years ago, I was flabbergasted at the quality of the wines. Couldn't pronounce the grapes, but had to rely entirely on the sommelier of the restaurant to understand what I needed or felt like drinking, because I wouldn't know, anything. And so this is really interesting. It's we're almost at an hour already, so we're gonna have to wrap it up soon. But let's finish with this subject, because it's so new and the evolution, even though it's been 30 years since freedom, 35 years. Is there then sustainability, biodynamic, organic? Are those conversations happening, or were they always, like I've always said, wine was always organic. We screwed it up, and now we're acting like we're so heroes because we're going back to organic. But what's the prevailing philosophy amongst the winemakers in Romania?
Talking about the supermarket, one of the most successful wine in this exclusive range for the private label, it's a biodynamic wine, a biodynamic Fetească Neagră, coming from the only one winery dedicated to the biodynamic agriculture, and it's very successful. And it's growing in terms of development, in terms of direction. Organic and biodynamic is growing in Romania, not because of the consumer or the local consumption. It's not necessarily a need coming from internal market, but because of the owner philosophy, or because the trend. And you want to create something unique, and you have the possibility to do that, because we know very well it's an investment, a bigger investment sometimes, especially when it comes to some numbers. Because when it's a small winery, maybe it's might be even cheaper to have an organic instead of a conventional one. But definitely it's a trend growing into the Romanian market, and it's not from today, it's not from yesterday. For many years already, organic wineries, vegan, are available in Romania. For the past almost 10 years, the Domeniul Bogdan, which is the winery focused on biodynamic, is doing very, very well in Romania. So sustainability, and also this part of organic wines.
I've said this many times on the show that sustainability, the wine industry was probably the most natural industry in the world for sustainability, because of its interaction with the earth and the culture. Organic and biodynamic, I think, like I said, it was always that way. We introduced these things, but I think in the beginning, at least in California, the idea of organic and biodynamic wines meant you needed to suffer through some things because you were doing something healthy, which is, I don't ever believe that just because the wine's organic, you're being healthy for yourself. But the idea that you can make a wine that tastes like kombucha and then tout that it's biodynamic is really not relevant. And I think one of the things that biodynamic wines do, which is really interesting to me, it sort of hit me not too long ago. We were just talking about formula wines in the supermarkets, at least in California. You buy Josh, or you buy Apothic Red, or you buy, Yellowtail, you're going to expect that same character over and over, almost like a bottle of beer, right? I buy Heineken because it tastes like Heineken. And biodynamic is the exact opposite of that. Because if you're doing it truly biodynamic, you're actually just at the whim of the terroir and the soil and the weather and the organic material in the soil at the time, and you will have a dramatically different wine from year to year by definition. So I always thought that was a fascinating part of what we're doing. We have a lot to talk about still, but the show's only an hour and we're already there. I think, time flies when you're having fun, right? So
next time we should have a glass of Romanian wine close by. So
I
we
would
should
love
take
to
care
do
of
that.
it.
Because that's one of the questions I had sent to you. Do you know of any LA groups that are bringing Romanian wine to Los Angeles? Like I said, I haven't seen them for years.
It's for sure Total Wine should have, because the importers are collaborating. Some of them are collaborating with Total Wines, which I know that probably it's not the the first place which might come to your head. You just said that supermarket, maybe it's not the first option when it comes to buying wine, to places where to buy a wine. But I would recommend to use the Mr. Google.
Yes. We'll do that next time.
Yeah.
And it's been fabulous to hear your expertise and your passion for what you're doing. And we will definitely have this conversation again in a few months to see what's changed. And it's such a pleasure to meet you and have you on the show. And I have to say, I don't have it in my current wine travel plans to be in Romania, but it certainly sounds like I need to get there and experience this.
You consider yourself invited in at least in Ternave in Transylvania, yes, which you mentioned a few times.
I have to tell you, is Premiat still around?
Might be, but I would recommend, even if would be, I would prefer to recommend something which is which will make talking about Romanian wines even in the future, like something which will stay for a long time in your dialogues with friends at the table, let's say.
Well, the reason I brought it up is that it's been actually very rewarding for me to find these newsletters, and I started to write them. I wrote them for about 10 years and bring them back to some of the original vineyards. So we're going to be in Piemonte in May, and I'm taking a copy of a 1981 newsletter to Pio Cesare. He's already seen it, but there's so much. We talk about history, and we talk about stories to tell, and it's really fun to be part of what was their sort of, launch in America. I can't imagine. I think my dad probably bought 300 or 400 cases of this Romanian wine. That had to be one of the largest purchases ever, at the time. So I don't know. Anyway, such a pleasure to hear your story and the expertise, and we'll do it again. And thank you for being on the show.
Thank you, Paul.
Cheers.
Bye. Cheers.